When I put this blank on the lathe, the plan was to rough turn it and put it away to dry. Still got some water in it, but has some cracks. Spalted alder, rough out another bowl, and put it away to turn it to final shape later. Twice turning a bowl refers to roughing out a green or wet blank to the general shape of the bowl and putting it away to dry. As it dries, it will deform. Once it's dry, you put it back on the lathe and turn it to its final symmetrical shape. I'm still a beginner and haven't found my wood turning niche, and maybe I never will. But that doesn't matter. Learning is what's fun. I think I'm starting to get the hang of this. When I turned this bowl several months ago, I was still using my first lathe, a fixed speed lathe I converted to variable speed with a treadmill motor. The control doesn't have a knob. I change speeds by changing the miles per hour of the treadmill with push-button controls. It's slow and tedious, but a big improvement over the old method of moving the belt from pulley to pulley. $7.50. I made a chart, which is on the wall in front of me, translating treadmill miles per hour to lathe RPM. I shouldn't be using this spindle gouge on this cross-grain piece of wood, but I didn't know that then. To keep the length of this video manageable, I speeded up 8 times many sections that would be otherwise boring, like this one. Turning spalted wood is not as easy as turning green wood. I have to go slowly, and I have a long, long way to go. The tool rest is as tight as I can get it, but because I'm holding the handle below the tool rest, the impact of the wood on the gouge drives the tool rest into the wood. I reset the tool rest, make sure I have clearance all the way around, and try again. I switch from the bowl gouge to a carbide tool, which is held horizontal, and there won't be that angle driving the tool rest into the wood if I get a catch. That worked better, but using carbide to me feels a little bit like cheating. Still have a long ways to go. Do not like turning this stuff, but I do like the result. Now that it's almost round, I put the carbide away and went back to the gouge. You see that sharp projection on the blank? I saw it, but didn't recognize the significance. It's almost round and much easier to turn. Because it's more nearly balanced, I was able to turn up to speed. The faster you can turn it, the easier it is to get smooth cuts. I switched to the shorter tool rest so I can work closer to the post, reducing vibration. I'm forming a tenon in the bottom of the bowl so I can reverse it and get to work on hollowing out the inside. I check the diameter of the tenon with my homemade gauge from time to time so I don't make it too small. I use the angled skew to shape the tenon into a dovetail to match the jaws of my chuck. And a parting tool to separate the tenon from the stem. With any sort of chuck, it's a good idea to tighten it at all available points, not just one, to be sure all slack is taken up. There's a little bit of wobble in the chuck. That needs to be corrected before I turn it around. The angle where the tenon meets the base of the bowl is not sharp and clean. It needs a little more work. I use a detailed spindle gouge, a more precise tool than the skew. I didn't think to move the camera a little bit so you could see what I was doing. I'll try this again. It's not spinning perfectly true, but it's close enough. You remember that sharp spur sticking out of the top of the bowl. Damn, wood is sharp. This, which I left on there, not realizing I was doing that. Ouch. Yeah, here's that. dagger that poked a hole in my hand just now. It won't be there for long. First thing to do is true up the face of the top of the bowl and get rid of that spur. I realized later that I should have cut the entire bowl down at least an inch to get farther from the pith and eliminate a lot of the subsequent cracking. I switch back to the bowl gouge. This is going to be a bowl after all. Bowl gouge has a stronger shaft than a spindle gouge, and the flute is deeper. So it's a stronger tool. I just can't get in there. I should have completely finished the outside of the bowl before I turned it around. Getting between the headstock and the bottom of the bowl at the correct angle is not possible, so I'm having to go downhill rather than uphill. In cross-grain turning, the cut should be made uphill from small to large for a smoother cut, the opposite of what's true for spindle turning. I'm also having to work much closer to that steel chuck than I like. Might make kind of an interesting feature. I decided not to cut all that bark away. I use the bowl gouge as a shear scraper to clean up the bottom. Right here. I don't need to be that picky on the first turning of a twice turned bowl. Somewhere along the line I forgot that I was going to do this twice, and I'm concentrating on making a nice bowl in one shot. That large crack and one like it on the other side of the bowl could have been largely eliminated if I'd have cut the bowl down another inch. A little high right there. Right where that rough spot is. Lesson learned, I take off that sharp edge at the top of the bowl. Some of this bark is loose enough it's going to fall off anyway. I'm getting a little tired. A long time ago, I start to think you're getting tired. It's time to quit. I should hollow that out. I'm not going to do it tonight. here, 13.8, here, 13.9, down here where the bark was, 18.5, 22, even looks wet here, about 19, so it's uneven. I set this one aside for 2 days and did not hollow it out first, and this is what I paid for that. Big cracks might render it unusable, but what I'll do is I'll fill them with glue and sawdust and see if I can salvage it. Moral of that story is, if it's uneven moisture at all, do it all in one shot or it's going to break. Wood glue and dust from the turning makes a good patch for large cracks. This glue is Titebond 2, by the way. I don't know what the difference is between Titebond 2 and Titebond 3 other than price. Some of this crack will be turned away, but I'll get the glue as far down in as I can. I will set this aside for another day. It's best to leave the chuck on the piece until it's finished, but I needed it for another project while this glue dried. That's what's known in the trade as a catch. Average wall thickness with this. I push straight in with a parting tool to establish the thickness of the wall and give the bevel of the gouge something to ride on. Maybe time to sharpen. I don't know who said, if it's almost sharp, it'll almost cut. But sharp tools make a world of difference. Stronger than it looks. I watch most wood turning videos at high speed, and I forget that slow and steady is the way to go. The bevels on my bowl gouges are too shallow an angle to make the turn at the bottom of the bowl, and when it comes off the bevel, I lose control. I check wall thickness and depth with my fingers. Don't want to go too deep. It's supposed to be a bowl, not a funnel. I have to speed this up or we'll be here all day. I'm off the bevel down there because here. So with my new lathe, when I get my new lathe, I'll be able to work off the end. We're good through here. Good through here. Didn't get too thick, but that's going to be the bottom. So I just need to clean this up right there. Don't get in a hurry. Back to a carbide tool now to get rid of that nubbin in the bottom and to smooth out and true up the bottom. A little high right here. Little dimple right in the center. Not a dimple, a pimple. The carbide tip is a square, but a slightly rounded square. I'm not sure if I'm using a skew or a negative rake scraper. Regardless, it works. I'm not going to do any more with that. This is going to take an awful lot of sanding sealer and stuff. And do I want to leave this that shape because that's mighty thick down there? Or do I want to come back out here and bring this down some? Okay, to about here. And then this. Yeah, I think I do. I want to do that. So down a little bit here. Need more fine dust to fill these cracks and the torn end grain. Okay, first, I'm through with sharp tools. I'm going to go get a beer. Be right back. Well, no wonder it feels like beer time. It's past supper time. Need a lot more, don't we? Like pablum. Boy, that soaks right into the wood so fast. I don't know if the sawdust is working in or not. Now for small cracks, what you can do is just put glue in them and then sand lightly across the cracks, and the little bit of wood the sandpaper takes off will join the glue and make an almost invisible seal. Okay, now inside. After this is set up, I'll go over the whole thing with sanding sealer. Get this ragged torn grain too. As long as I'm here, having so much fun, forgot to drink any of my beer after the first swig. Knock off the big lumps so I don't have to sand them off. This has been drying overnight. Has changed shape again a little bit. Easy. Because the bowl is no longer round, light scraping isn't reaching the low spots. I think I'm going to call that good. Sand the rest of that. And this needs to be considerably hot. So if I get a catch, it will spin out of the wood, not into it. a little rough in places, but I'm going to go ahead and sand it. That howling noise is the shop vac I use for dust collection when I'm sanding. The end of the pipe is wired to the bed, just out of sight at the bottom of the picture. The inside needs a little more cleanup using a carbide scraper. I think we're going to have to settle for a certain amount of imperfection on this one. I want this bowl to absorb all the sanding sealer it can possibly hold. Especially in the porous end grain. I'm going to try the technique of putting glue in the little cracks and sanding lightly over it. This sandpaper is worn out just about. I'm going to fill the end grain too. See how that works. That might be a slick trick for a torn out end grain. Those are never going to be perfect anyway. I think I'm going to call that good and move onward. A little bit of sanding marks, a little bit of tear out. I will get better as I go along, I think. Okay, I think this application cloth has about had it. So now, polishing paste. Wax, really. I don't know what all's in this. Carnauba wax, I do know. A little bit of roughness. At the bottom of the bowl where the almost flat bottom begins to reach the sides. I do have kill marks there. But no matter. My wife will think it's beautiful. First glance, this doesn't look half bad. Now all I have to do is get it off of here without destroying it. How am I going to do this? I got to cogitate. Thinking what I'm going to do is put this up against it, hold it with a tailstock, and while I part this off, and I will finish with a saw. I don't like all that banging around. I'm going to cut it. Now, have to sand this down some. Should have rocked that over a little bit more, spent a little more time sanding flat.